Welcome to Tech London, a show featuring interviews with London's top creative entrepreneurs, startups, investors, design agencies, internet marketers and freelancers that make up the Tech London online community, which mostly lives on the Slack instant messaging platform. We rotate through both hosts and guests for these interviews, so you have the chance to hear from multiple perspectives on London's tech scene.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Tech London. In fact, not another. It's the first Tech London podcast I managed to produce so far in 2023. And we've got loads more coming up after this. You'll be able to listen to Olivia Saboni, who will be talking about impact investing. There's Thor A. Rain, a health activist, about how to take care of your team. And also my friend Tracy, who is co-founded the first WordPress membership plugin back in, I think it was 2008. That's called Wishlist, which you might have seen on AppSumo. And we'll be talking about being lonely as an entrepreneur. But before we get to all those people, I've got my mate Richie in the studio. Richard, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for, sir?
Hi, Bernie. I'm privileged if I'm the first one of this year, aren't I? So what am I known for? I'm known for software development, but what I'm more recently known for is software development using no-code technologies.
That's what I really wanted to ask you, because I only just understand how to, navigate WordPress after 15 years of using it. So what on earth is no code? Because whenever I say no code, everyone's like, I don't know what that is. And I really don't. I'm not even trying to be cute and coy. Like, what does that mean, and how can it help me building stuff in my company?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned WordPress, because if you think of WordPress for websites, then think of no-code development for software development. It's a very similar thing, where WordPress came about to make life easier for people to build websites, and then has obviously grown into something a bit bigger. And it's the same with a lot of the no-code tools. So my no-code tool of choice is something called bubble.io. I spent 3 months sort of evaluating different platforms, and that's the one that I sort of settled on as best of breed. But I see that as, like I say, a sort of what WordPress is to web development, then Bubble is to software development.
And how did you find yourself into this path? Is it just as simple as it is, quicker, faster, and easier? I'm sorry if I stole your answer there. Or is there, why did you stop doing what you were doing, which I imagine was coding, and go down this path?
Yeah, so if I give you a very brief sort of potted history, then many moons ago, so at the age of 14, I had my first commercial software published, and I'm now 52, so I've got a lot of development experience, which isn't the way most people come into no code. So, like I say, I went through that whole sort of traditional development cycle, and then going off at a slight tangent, in 2019, my family and I went for a year-long sort of round-the-world trip. During that is when COVID happened, and I happened to be in Vietnam when that happened, and a lot of our income sort of was killed overnight. So I had to look at other ways of generating income that I could obviously do remotely working from Vietnam. Like I say, I'd spent 3 months evaluating different things anyway, because I thought there's got to be a better way of developing software in this day and age. I've been doing it 30 plus years, and you still found that if someone came to you with a problem, you would still have to build the same things. So a login system, an admin system, all these kinds of things, and you're just reinventing the wheel every time. And I thought there's got to be a better way. And no code solved a lot of that. And it's platform as a service as well. So you don't need to spend 2 days setting up a development environment. You log in, your development environment's there. So there are all these things that sort of led me down the no code path. And again, it's interesting being in the industry for so long, then these things have been promised for years and years. and everyone said, oh, we've got this amazing tool and you hardly have to do anything and it just works out of the box. What you find with those tools, or in the past, was that they were either so simple that they were very constrained and they were fine for doing a finite number of developments, or they were so open that you may as well just build the thing traditionally because it's just as complex, where this seems to be a happy medium where you've got a lot of out-of-the-box sort of functionality, but you can also use things like plugins and build things totally bespoke.
So what is it? Is no code only for specific types of products, or is it? Could I build anything from like a CRM system for a petrol company to a fintech product to a Shopify thing? I don't know.
Yeah, so
shouting out things there. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So in all the time I've been using this, I've come across one project that wasn't possible, and that was at the time, that was about 18 months ago now. Now that actual product is achievable with the tools I'm using. But again, if I look at my sort of client base, because I tend to build for external clients all the time, then it's a huge variety. It's not just, I only work in this industry and do software for lots of different things. So just off the top of my head, then a lot of stuff in health tech, the marine industry, the insurance industry, lots of tech for good, which are the sorts of products I really like to build because I like using technology for good, surprisingly. So yeah, when you look at that, then there's just a huge variety. And like I say, there's nothing I've really come across that you can't build using no-code development rather than traditional.
So going back to the Vietnam bit, because I meant to ask about that earlier. Did you get into this because you were on the road with your family and accidentally got stuck in Vietnam in a pandemic, or was this something you were thinking about anyway as an evolution in your consultancy?
It massively accelerated it, really. So yes, it was something I was interested in, and I've always worked on cutting edge technology. So like I say, internet TV before e-commerce existed, satellite TV software when sort of Sky first appeared. I've always been at the cutting edge, so I've always been looking at what's coming and like investigating those things. And it just so happened that I'd been investigating this, and then obviously the pandemic happened, and suddenly lots of people from my past got in touch with me and said, we need to build something, but we need to build it really quickly. So that sort of dovetailed perfectly with no code. So one example, a pretty big chunky system I built in about 3 months single-handedly using no code. That company had previously had something similar built, and it had taken a team of 10 developers 2 years to produce the same, and it actually didn't have as many features. So I think that's a great example of just how quickly you can build stuff with this.
So was it your location that dictated this, or was it the speed you had to build things? Was it because you got like a rush of orders and like, how the hell am I going to do all this on my own? On my laptop in a cafe in Vietnam?
Yeah.
By the pool, actually, because I saw the photos.
Yeah. So it was speed, but again, it proved that whole thing, because I've always been into sort of co-working and the whole digital nomad thing, for want of a better phrase, and proving that I can work from anywhere with a laptop. So I'd done various experiments in the past where I'd spent a week traveling around Scotland camping while building a new product, just to prove you can do this thing these days.
That was like 2015, wasn't it, or 2016?
Yeah, I think that was 2015 I did that.
I remember that.
But again, with Vietnam, then I had my laptop, I had a decent internet, I built a small co-working community out there as well, because I do think it's massively beneficial and important to still be surrounded by other people and sort of share your knowledge and experiences, and that worked really well out there too. And one of the strange things was I thought the time difference may be a hindrance because it's sort of 7 hours time difference to the UK, and all my clients at the time were in the UK. But that actually worked as a positive because we could have a meeting at the end of their day, decide what needed to be done. I would then effectively have a full working day before they checked into their office at 9 a.m. and magically all their work was done because I'd have a full day to work on their stuff. So a lot of clients actually loved that.
I really like being in a different time zone because people don't interrupt you.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. I had all morning until just after lunch every day of properly focused time, and especially with things like development or any creative work, I guess, where you just don't want any interruptions, and you can just get your head down and get that stuff done. So that's exactly how I sort of planned my days as well.
So let's dive in a little bit to the Vietnam trip, because I know that story of, so you set off around the world with your family and it's all like way, and then and then everything changed. I feel like one of those and then everything changes for Richard and his family. Chef Ramsay came. But like what was it like? What was it like being on your way around this, taking your family on this round the world trip, and no homeschooling and working remotely, and then suddenly the whole world shifts? What can you?
Yeah. So obviously the first, what was it, about 7-8 months, everything was normal. So we'd sort of, again, it's a longer story we probably don't have time for, but we basically sold all our belongings, literally pretty much all our belongings were 2 suitcases and 4 hand luggages. So we left the UK and went to the Czech Republic, then Bali, Bangkok, Koh Samui, New Zealand, and then to Vietnam. Like I say, thankfully we'd done all that before sort of the pandemic happened, which was obviously a very strange time in Vietnam. But the way Vietnam handled it was they just closed the borders instantly when it happened. But because they sort of handled it in that way, then COVID never really got into the country. So we looked at what it was like back in the UK, which was quite surreal, being there and looking what it was like back here. Because we were just living totally free, like relatively normal lives in Vietnam. And that's how we ended up staying even longer. We looked at sort of what it was like back here and decided to extend that stay. So in the end, we were out of the country for nearly 3 years before we came back, which wasn't bad considering we were only going away for a year.
I know that story, but that sounds nuts to be displaced like that. What was it like coming back? In fact, what I'm most interested in, when you arrived back in the UK, did you just like, how did your work day and environment change as you got back? Was it just carrying on what you were doing, no difference, or did you have to make changes to how you ran your day and business?
Yeah. So it was quite a big culture shock, obviously, and the weather was an absolute killer for me because we came back at the sort of Christmas time. So we were used to Vietnam, where we genuinely felt cold in their winter when it was sort of 20 degrees, and we came back to like -2 or something. But then from my sort of work days, then yes, it obviously shifted, but a lot of the clients are still clients and I'm still doing things for, and then new clients came on board as well. But yeah, again, I've always worked in sort of co-working spaces. I'm very lucky that I have a local co-working space just a couple of miles away. So I just went back there and just carried on doing the same kind of work, but just in a different environment.
What was I don't know how to segue to, so we're just going to dive in. tell us about the co-working retreat you do in Spain, which is it 4 years you've been doing that?
Yeah, so I think I started that in, was it 2017? But obviously there were a couple of years where it didn't happen when I was away. But yeah, the idea with the co-working retreat, like I say, I've always been into co-working, always been into getting out of your normal environment. I think there's so many advantages to doing that, even short term. And so me and a couple of other people put together something called a co-working retreat, which was every December between Malaga and Marbella, basically a week of workshops, talks, and that kind of thing. And it's a great time of year to do it. We're going to do it at the beginning of December each year. And the reason we chose that sort of time is you get time to reflect on your previous year. It's typically a quiet time for most people, unless you're in things like retail. And you can sort of plan your next year as well. So, and the weather's still decent in Spain at that time, so it's nice to get some sun.
It's all about the sun. Going back to what you said there, what have you got out of being in a co-working space? Because it's really hard to explain to people, because even after all the time I've been in it, it's like, it's all about the community. It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, because a lot of people think, you're just renting a desk somewhere. But like you say, you're not. You're speaking to other humans, and I think the whole thing about working from home is great, and it's something I have done for years. But as I said with Vietnam, it's really important to have other people to run ideas by, get inspiration from, try and help and educate. So all these things sort of add up, and co-working spaces are done right. That's exactly what they give you. But as I sort of hopefully proved in Vietnam, even if you don't have a space, it's about getting a group of people together. And the way we sort of ran it, then we would try and move around different cafes and that kind of stuff in Vietnam. But it was still our same group. And yes, there'd be people that went every single week, and then other people that only came to some sessions. But it was really good. And we sort of introduced some focus time, as well as the sort of engaging with each other. So it's a really good way of doing it. And especially if you're in these far-flung places, then it's a great way to discover other people and make friends and all those kinds of good things.
It's a really good. My two favourite ways to get to know a city are to go to a co-working space and go running. And you kind of, always that's my kind of prescription for landing somewhere, whether it's for living there forever or going there for a weekend. Tell me about the is it no code retreat? I'm going to give it the right thing.
Yeah, it's the MVP retreat. So in a similar sort of vein to the co-working retreat, then with this whole no code journey I've been on, then as I say, you can build things very, very quickly. So a lot of people that come to me are building MVPs. So they want to get a product out there quickly and actually prove that a market exists before they go off and build a roadmap of a 6-month development. They actually want to make sure there's an appetite for it, get some customers. And again, a lot of people then they feed the feedback from customers into their roadmap. So something I sort of discovered was, actually, you can build this stuff really quickly. And I've done hack days where we've built products in a day, the simple products, but we sort of built things and proved that they work. So what I was finding that actually the thing slowing things down is communication. And as great as a lot of online tools are, sitting with people face to face out of their normal environment is the fastest way you can actually work. So I just came up with this concept of, take people away for a week. So you effectively take a client away for a week and build their MVP in that week. They're out of the normal environment, so they're not getting disturbed and say, oh, I've just got to go to this meeting, which slows you down if I would need instant feedback on something. They understand the process more. You can tweak things on the fly. It's a very sort of fluid, dynamic way of building, which suits no code and speed really well.
That is in our company. Like the few times we managed to get together in person, we've done more in 1 week than we've done in 1 month. And I'm kind of thinking, I don't know if this is just my romantic ideal of the world nowadays, but now everyone's become more remote working than they ever have done. The idea of getting together is more somewhere between mainstream and attractive. Did you ever read that book, A Year Without Pants, which was about the guy who works for WordPress?
No,
really famous.
The title sounds intriguing.
Okay, so I thought you might know it, because so what happened is when Automatic went from being, they got to like the 70 employee mark, and this was back in like 2012 or something like that. They just were growing and growing and growing, and they got, I'm not going to look it up because I'll crash my computer or something, but it's called A Year Without Pants, and I'll put a link in the show notes, and it is probably 10 years old, this book now. So what he got brought in, he's an IT consultant and worked with like Microsoft and all these people, and he had to, even though he's very experienced, he started working on the service desk at Automatic, and then got put in a team. And then what happened, I don't know if it's still the same there nowadays, but I imagine it is. But every 6 months, the remote team would, this is 10 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, would get together and work for a week, and they got given a budget. And, say it was like, $15,000, you could either like live in a tent and blow it all on going snowboarding and drinking, or you could like live in a 5-star hotel and just work together, whatever you wanted to do. But you had to come up with something at the end of the week. And I think throughout the book is that people were very efficient, and that's how they worked then. But when they got together, they just accelerated development, because they're all like sat around the same table and chatting, and, they go and get a coffee and end up talking about it then. So they kind of created, arguably what is an office environment, but because they treasured being together and that works really well for me as well. Being together every day, I just get really bored and start fights. But when I'm with a group of people for a short amount of time, I can focus like a laser beam, and my energy. How do you find that? The energy thing, I think, is the one I want to get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. It's just what you say. It's that focus, momentum, all these amazing things, and people talk about being in flow. Well, when you're hyper focused on something, then that just happens naturally. And again, if I'm building with someone, it's exciting for me to see their product come into life, but for them, it just blows them away. And they're having that direct input at every point. So it's not like I disappear for a week and here's an update. They're saying, oh, actually, that drop down, can we do this with it? Or, oh, no, that should have these options in it. Where even if you're doing that via Slack or email or WhatsApp, any other comms, it's not as good as someone pointing at the screen saying, oh, could you just make that smaller or bigger, or those kinds of things.
I've worked remotely pretty much for 15 years now, and it definitely, it really works for me. I like going to a co-working space, but I would hate to go to an office, which might sound a bit weird because it's nearly the same thing. But that's one of the downsides. Like a lot in lockdown, a lot of people who, really good friend of ours is an engineer. They build these massive cooling systems for football stadiums and oil rigs and stuff like that. And everyone needs to be, Graham found it really hard because they spend a lot of time around a table poring over plans and prototypes and stuff like that. And they just couldn't get their head around doing that on Zoom or in Miro or something like that. So that in-person thing is really important. so we're coming to the end of our time here, Richard. Where's the best place to find you online and find out about no code and cause trouble with you?
Yeah. So my website's probably the best place. So that's nocodeninja.co.uk.
Is that a Wix website, or is it?
Surprisingly, it's built on no-code technologies. And I've got some new stuff going on there. There's a weekly blog that's all around the no-code space there anyway, plus some sort of general information. But I'm currently building a little AI widget on there as well, like a ninja bot to answer any other questions. So watch this space for that one too.
And is it if people wanted to come on the co-working retreat that happens every year, is that somewhere online, or is that on the website, or?
The best way to, again, that's coworkingretreat.co.uk. I like to keep these domain names simple. Or, of course, people can connect with me on LinkedIn as well.
And we'll put a link in the show notes to all of those things. Thank you very much, Richard, for your digital nomady no-code insight today. And
thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you go into the Slack channel, we'll post this episode there. If you go to techlondon.io, that is the one-page website, which is everything in there. But the main activity is in that highly populated Slack channel that's been running since 2014, when Jonathan set it up, when Slack was still a thing. And there's channels and conversations there, and it's a great way to connect with people, founders, creators in London, all around that little Old Street area there. Thanks very much. Take care. Be careful out there. It is a jungle.
You've been listening to the Tech London Show. If you're interested in joining the community or even making an appearance on this show, make sure you join our Slack group over at techlondon.io. Till next time.